Now, a plan to introduce a new carbon tax on global shipping looks like it's going to fail to get the backing it needs to come into force. The idea is to raise billions of dollars to fund the green technology, which would reduce emissions from an industry that's responsible for 2% of carbon emissions. Countries are meeting at the International Maritime Organization, which is a UN agency in London, where they were set to adopt the plan that has been years in the making. But late on Thursday, President Trump called it a scam and said that it seems it has enough support to stop it from coming into force. Well, Richard Meade will break it all down for us. He's the editor of the shipping industry journal Lloyd's List. He's actually at the talks right now. So Richard, tell us, what's the plan and why does it look like it's going to fail?
Well, I wouldn't say it's definitely going to fail right now. They've just gone in behind me to finalize the decision. It is on a knife edge. This was an agreement that was basically agreed by all 176 member state governments back in April. Since then, though, what we've seen is a coalition led by the US with Saudi Arabia and several other petrostates really pushing back against that agreement. And we've seen a number of states that were previously in favor have reversed their decision. And it's pretty much 50-50 now as to whether or not it goes forward. Now, even if it does get agreed and adopted, it is no guarantee that we will actually see this come into force, because there is a 10-month period after this adoption where you could still see that pressure from the US, ultimately see this pushed into the long grass, politically speaking, for several years to come.
Well, you mentioned pressure from the U.S. How much of this has to do with President Trump and the tariffs he's imposed?
An awful lot. As I say, this was something that's already been agreed. We should be at the adoption stage now. This is a political campaign from several member state governments to really try and push back against what Trump has described as an environmental slush fund. It's nothing of the sort. What it is an attempt to bridge the gap between the current fossil fuels that shipping runs on, that's accountable for that 3% of global trade, and the price of fuels that will be zero carbon down the line. Now, that's going to cost an awful lot of money. Conservative estimate, somewhere between 2 to 50% more than the current fossil fuels. Now, you need to bridge that gap in terms of the price. That's what the money was there to do, to try and get us from fossil fuels to sustainable fuels. What we're going to end up with is a global patchwork of regional frameworks, much more expensive, frictional trade. It's going to be a lot more complicated and a lot more costly to do shipping in the future if we don't get this agreement.
Well, exactly. I want to hear a little bit more on that now. If it does fail, what do you see is likely to happen, and what could it mean for consumers?
Well, ultimately, what you're going to see is an end to this idea that we have a globalized carbon price for shipping. Now, shipping is a global industry. We move billions of tons of trade around the world. It needs a global regulation. But instead, what we're going to have is a patchwork of these regional frameworks. Now, that's going to be much more expensive. It's going to be much more fragmented, costly, complicated for shipping to navigate. Ultimately, it adds cost onto the price tag of globalized trade. Now, it won't be an immediate impact, but taken together with what we're already seeing with tariffs and a bifurcation of trade where shipping is essentially being weaponized and driven down geopolitical lines, it basically means that shipping becomes a lot less efficient than it has done in the past.
Wow, shipping becoming weaponized. What words. Richard Meade, it's such a pleasure having you join us live from the talks. Thank you for making the time for us this morning.